Everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Reduce Your Energy Consumption Through LED Lighting. I'm Cinda Broad, and I'm the Community Manager for the Energy and Carbon Management Working Group here at 2 Degrees, and I'll be your host for this webinar. I'm delighted to introduce you to Tom Norton and Alan Hale of the Environment Agency, who will be presenting today. Now, a few technical points before we get going. After today's presentations, there's going to be some time to address any questions you may have. And you can submit a question to me at any point by typing into the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen and pressing send. I'll ask these questions to Tom and Alan after they finish their presentations. Any problems with the technology or audio during the presentation, please use the chat box on the right-hand side to send me a message. Drop-down menu, just select to send the message to the host and I'll get back to you. On over to Tom for the first part of today's session. Over to you, Tom.
Hi, thanks, Cinda. Thank you very much for all attending today. My name's Tom Norton, and I've worked for the Environment Agency for 9 years, 5 of those in environmental management, and 4 of those in our construction arm, which builds our flood defences, which at the moment are being used quite a lot around the country. Lucinda, if you could move on to onto the slides, that would be great. I'm not seeing the slides, unfortunately.
That's fine. Just go on your own screen, and I'll move those on when you say move on.
Okay. So running through today's presentation, I'll just give you a quick overview of the Environment Agency, what our environmental impacts are, and our strategy is to minimise those. What carbon dioxide footprint is. Then I'll hand over to Alan, and he'll go through the benefits of LED lighting, how to design and fit LED lights. So we've had a number of interesting issues crop up when we've put these designs together and got companies in to fit them. Then run through a little bit about getting senior management buy-in, and Alan will go through the results so far and any future lighting projects. If you could move on, Lucinda. Okay. The Environment Agency, we were formed in 1996, and we're the environmental regulator for England and Wales, and our job is to protect and improve the environment. We focus on water, air, land and our coast. Our main sort of work areas are flood risk management, climate change, regulating business through environmental planning and permitting. We have around 12,000 employees, all of whom have a strong scientific background, which means we're challenged by a number of them on a daily basis on what we're doing, and we have a desire to communicate and lead on climate change, and to ensure that we do that, we have to make sure that our own house is in order before we go preaching to others, if that makes sense. If you could move on, Lucinda. A number of positive impacts through the work that we do, for example, protecting houses through flood defences, reducing emissions through climate change and things like the carbon reduction commitment, which we run on behalf of DEFRA. We also permit businesses for waste permits, water discharge consents, water resources licensing. So we have a massive positive environmental impact, but carrying out all of this work, we have negative impacts on the environment. And the slide there shows our negative impacts on the environment. Into a few of those. So carbon dioxide and our other emissions have big impacts on our climate change activities. We also work in sensitive habitats. Much of our construction work is on watercourses, so we have lots of potential to damage habitats and wildlife when we're carrying out that construction work. We also have lots of supply chain impacts. We spend roughly £1 billion every year, and quite a lot of that is on flood defence work, so we need to make sure that we are as ethical as possible on our purchasing of goods. So a few of our environmental impacts, and the way that we're managing those if you could move on, Lucinda. We have at the moment a 5-year sustainability strategy that's running from 2010 to 2015, and we're reducing our environmental impacts in 5 main areas: energy and mileage, which then reduce our carbon dioxide footprint, and we're also reducing our water and waste impacts. We're doing pretty well at the moment. We've met our targets for 2014-2015 on mileage, water, and the total amount of waste produced. We're working on the amount of waste that we're sending to landfill, and that will be 0 by the time we reach 2014 and 2015. And we've made a 50% reduction in our carbon dioxide footprint since 2006-07 through a number of different methods, and so have to comply with our environmental regulations. Quite environmental regulations we enforce, so if we're not complying with ourselves, it can make us look a little bit stupid if we're not complying with those. As I mentioned before, we manage our procurement and construction and pension funds in the most sustainable and ethical manner that we can. In fact, our pension fund has won a number of awards for its ethical and sustainable procurement of its investments. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about our carbon dioxide footprint. A lovely little graph on screen, if you could, Lucinda. And it's effectively broken down into 4 areas. The big red area at the bottom is our pumping impacts. We have to pump an awful lot of water when it's dry to make sure water companies have enough water to abstract for their customers, and also when it's wet at the moment to make sure that we protect as many houses as possible from flooding. The second area is our buildings footprints, which are the yellow areas to the right there, and that comes from our buildings' electricity, the gas we use to heat our buildings. Some of our buildings are oil powered, and the final group is our landlord electricity, because we have a number of buildings that we can't procure the energy for. It comes from the landlords. The green areas to the left of the pie chart are our transport emissions, and that comes from our light and casual cars, our hire cars, the amount of train travel that we do, and there is a very small amount of air travel that we unfortunately can't stop. Finally, we have the blue bits in the sort of top left-hand corner, which are what we class as other carbon. We have a number of boats that do coastal survey work, and we also have a number of mapping planes that fly over the country and produce our flood maps and various other bits and pieces that we need. So roughly from 56,000 tonnes that we emitted last year, it's broken down in that pumping carbon accounts for about 41% of emissions. Our buildings account for 25%, our transport account for 23%, and our other carbon is only 10%. And one of the ways that we are reducing these emissions is through the benefits of LED lighting. Alan, I'll hand over to you now to go through the next slides.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm Alan Hale. I work as a FM technical advisor for energy and property, and we've got about 181 offices and depots of various sizes in our portfolio. I'm part of a small team that's responsible for looking at those buildings and how we can target improvements, be it through the sort of installed building services, fabric improvements, behaviour issues, management, whatever it may be. What I'm going to talk about on these slides is the sort of around the benefits of LED lighting. Is in our experience, we put in just over half a dozen now on some of our buildings, primarily the external car parks and storage areas. And I'm just going to talk about our experience there in terms of the design, some of the issues we've had, some of the positive things we've got back out of it. In terms of the benefits, retrofits LED lighting. Hopefully, I would imagine most people are fairly aware of it. But in terms of our external lighting on our sites, it's generally halogen lights, sodium or halide, or a combination of these lamp types. And because it's these lamp types, the controls tend to default to a time clock. So for us, our working pattern is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., we've got these light time clock and a photo cell that are operational every night of the year, which to us just seemed something that we needed to start to question. With LED lighting, it's much more flexible. The light's instant. There's no warm-up time. It allows for greater range control. So it's allowed us to install notably presence detection, but also the opportunity to vary lux levels. We don't need those high levels of light that we've currently got in our car parks, where I think you could work quite nicely out there, which is not the position we want to be in. And what we know from the 6 sites that we've done is at least a sort of 80% reduction in the overnight consumption when compared to these standard sodium or halide arrays that we've had before, which operated from dusk till dawn. We've targeted sites where the halide and the sodium were already in a poor state of repair. So we weren't necessarily comfortable with building a business case for a halide system or sodite system that was fairly recent and still had some life into it. In terms of the maintenance and running costs, it's not just the operational costs. It's not just the sort of lumens, the greater output you get for power in terms of wattage, but with a longer lamp life and increased further through less hours of actual use. So through better controls, we're not using those lamps so long, and they already last a long time anyway. There's less ongoing maintenance. Our external lights, as I imagine most people's, are on 3-4 metre columns. We need cherry pickers to get to them, and those access equipment, it's a lot of money. And what tends to happen is that we wait until lamps fail in a suitable number and require a sort of bulk replacement, again, which creates its own issues for us as building managers in terms of health and safety, where we're quite happy to allow areas of our car park to be plunged into darkness while we wait for it to become financially viable to replace a bulb, which seems a crazy position to be in. The last one, in terms of reduced carbon footprint, I'll go into more detail, as I've already said, about the efficiencies and the type of controls when I talk about the design. But the other benefit from us is shifting away from this dusk till dawn operation of external lights, which in circumstances is pretty hard to justify. As Tom alluded to about the fact of who we are and what we preach to others, it quite rightly draws public attention to the way that we operate buildings, particularly highly visible buildings. I'm based down next to a regional head office. It's a visible building. We have 40 external lights blazing away from dusk till dawn. Quite rightly, people start to ask the question, what are you doing that for? So through this sort of better application of external lighting and LED, our impact in terms of carbon, but also light pollution, has been quite dramatically reduced. The light is directional. There's very little spill. It can be delivered to where actually you want it. If you could go on to the next slide, Lucinda, please. The design and fit of LED lights. The design really has got to reflect the actual lighting need for the site. Each light at our site was individually assessed. What's its purpose? What is it lighting? What is it lighting? Why? And for how long? And when you've determined the need, then the design can start to reflect exactly what you want, determine how much light you require in terms of lux levels, and you can start to select suitable optics. So do we want a narrow band of light that's focused at a particular install? We have oil storage tanks here. Do we want those to be on all night, focused on that oil storage tank, or do we want it to be better controlled and linked to the CCTV system, so that if someone does attempt to steal or damage that, it comes on and captures them? So there's a combination of sort of better controls and also assessing exactly what the light's there for, because historically they've been here for 10 years and never questioned that. The design has to happen within the sort of context of health and safety and the security, the CCTV, and out-of-hours working practices. So, recently our regional offices have got incident flood response rooms, which you can imagine have been a little bit busy the last week or so. So people are coming in at hours of the night. So we have to ensure that the lighting system is flexible enough. And what we've done is that areas of the site which are largely unoccupied out of hours will lowly lit. When the incident response team come on force, their way is lit towards the access to the building. So the lights are very low, a very low lux level, and they will ramp up as people enter the site. So it's getting a good balance between saving energy, but also maintaining the kind of quality of light that we need to maintain health and safety and security. We've worked with the new designs looking to comply with the British standard EN 124642, the outdoor workplaces. Now, this can be difficult when we're swapping existing like-for-like systems, but we've kind of tried to make sure that designers work against that where they can, and we've expected as part of the kind of designs that come back, there's the modelling of the external area, so we've got an idea of the photometric data showing the expected illuminance levels, which should be fairly uniform across the area we want it to be lit. We look to get a designer that's competent and check their competency, whether they're accredited through the Society of Light and Lighting or the Institute of Lighting Professionals, someone who knows what they're doing and is very experienced. As I said before, the controls are a critical aspect to get right. Just swapping light or halogen light with an LED will save energy because of the greater efficiency. But getting the controls right will just move you on a step further and almost double what you're saving. Where possible as well, we've looked to submeter the existing external lighting load, so when the new install is put in, we can isolate the external lighting load and report on that separately. I mean, that's best practice, but in reality what we found is that on one of our sites, the external lighting is fed from multiple different circuits, and to actually submeter them would be financially impractical. Some of our larger sites where they have a dedicated supply and a dedicated distribution board, we've been able to do that, and of course that data can feed across the sites that we haven't been able to do that with. The other side of it is quality. And there's such a broad range of lights that are available out there, from your B&Q cheapy light to high-end products. We tended to look at the high-end products, the Philips, the Osrams, the established suppliers, the renowned suppliers. We looked for things that were P65 rated, so they had a high protection against the ingress of sort of water and dust. They're outside in extreme conditions. And we've gone for fittings that were guaranteed for 5 years. Actually, I've put a minimum of 3 on here, but we went for 5. We want to have some guarantees, really, that the lights did what they do. And I think that was always a bit of a jump into LEDs, is will they do what they say they will do in terms of longevity. The other of it was the commissioning. We've talked about the controls and setting lux level. It's commissioning and work across a sort of broad range of energy initiatives, from sort of BMS systems, etc. And commissioning is always something that really gets squeezed, and it's me that it gets squeezed because it's so important. It's always overlooked, it seems. So failure to commission correctly is a real missed opportunity, but it also creates, for building managers, a real legacy of problems that have to eventually be addressed. So at the end of the install that we had here at our regional head office, it was a walk round, out of hours, in the dark, looking at every light. Have we got it set up right? And a few lights are a point too high up and they're dazzling. And it is important to go around and commission it. So I couldn't emphasise commissioning enough, really, in terms of that kind of design aspect to it. Could I have the next slide, please, Lucinda? I think this one's over to you, Tom.
Yep. Management buy-in. I know this is one of the tricky things for all environmental professionals, is getting the people who make the decisions to buy into what we're trying to do. And we've got sort of three I suppose, tips that hopefully you'll already know is that once you've got an environmental strategy, or you're wanting to produce an environmental strategy, make sure it's signed off by the board. Understand the risks of not having an environmental strategy, i.e. they can get prosecuted, loss of reputation compared to their competitors that maybe have one, and also the biggest thing for us is reduced costs. We found that as well as putting carbon figures in front of our board, if we put costs as well that we can save, then they're more than likely to sign off business cases on that basis alone. As Alan did too before, look at the sites where you can get your biggest wins. We've got a number of offices here that use huge amounts of electricity. So quite rightly, that's where we're concentrating our efforts first, because we can get the biggest wins. And the final thing to make sure that there is a payback for everything. For example, at our Blandford office, where we've installed LED lighting, the difference over the lifetime costs of LED lighting compared to halide lighting was only £4,000. So therefore, we work that it'll take us 3 years to pay back that difference. Once we've done that, we're then saving money all the time. So if you can make sure there's a payback, then most managers look seeing positive figures on their budget sheets. Alan, it's back to the next slide.
Yeah, results so far. I mean, as I've alluded to, we've done six sites, 7 sites just about to be rolled out, and there's been a lot of positive feedback from the staff. What we did was we did a controlled rollout where we did one site first, and then we did the lessons from that site. You know, what went wrong, what can we do better. So as they rolled out, we started to get a little bit slicker in the way that we approached it, and of course, working with our contractor, we both became a little bit slicker in the way that we put these in. One of the good things that has come back is the positive feedback from staff and visitors alike, because the type of light that we've gone for is one that is dimmed low but ramps up as the sensors are activated, or they're off and they ramp up when the sensors are activated. And this is quite a visual indicator for the people that are walking onto site. So our regional head office in Exeter is a busy site, so people coming on site who haven't seen this type of thing before, the lights ramp up as they're walking towards the entrance, and they dim down as behind them. It's really quite impressive, and it's one of the first things they mention when they walk in is that, you know, they're impressed with that, and they see that that's a sensible way of continuing your outside lighting. We were concerned about was compatibility with CCTV monitoring. A lot of our high priority sites are monitored by CCTV externally. So we were checking signs with the CCTV company and sending them through. You're happy with this? The advantage, I guess, with LED lighting like Hale, it's a white light which has a really good fit with cameras and capturing camera images. So, you know, we checked the design before, we checked after, you know, with the camera companies to see if they could, you know, if they were getting the kind of images that they were expecting, and everything seemed very good there. As I said, the lessons we've learned have helped us to develop an external LED lighting standard for all our new external lighting projects. So we can get consistency in the way we approach this across the estate. So any new external fit and any new external lighting will be done to the same standard, which is useful for us. But some of the challenges, I guess, is that some designers will be linked to lighting companies, and, you know, in the worst case scenario, we had a site which had 8 existing lights, and the design recommended an uplift to 64, which was quite dramatic and kind of missed the ideal specification. So an extreme case, but without knowing the right questions and getting that specification right, you know, why is the light there? What's its function? You know, so when someone does propose something that you can actually question, why have you put that there? I don't need light there. And one of of our specification was we work a lot with the Carbon Trust, and they've got a lot of good information on external lighting and LED, which I'd advocate anyone to go and read up on. Is that you can get yourself into a position where you can feed into that technical specification and be aware of some of the issues that may cause, and question what comes back. And then between you and the designer, you can come up with a design that's compatible for everyone. So, fuel concerns, of course, I think, particularly not just with LED, but particularly with sensors and the quality of kind of sensors that you use, and will they pick up people? We've got a due care to people in the car park, particularly at this time of year. You've got waves and you've got ice and things like that. We can't take chances with the lighting out there. So the sensors that we're using a very good range, very, very sensitive, and will pick people up and up almost instantly. And we were a little bit wary of that, how good they would be. But they're very good, and we learn from each install, and we just improve on that. And as products keep coming out, we keep looking at those as well. So the specification and design we can rely on as we go forward. Slide, I think. Lighting problems. I think Tom probably knows a little bit more about the trying of the use of LED lighting on the Thames Barrier, which has been a really good fit. I mean, any kind of lighting that's required 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and this is applications for our operational teams that are looking at screens that block up with flood debris. They've got cameras fixed on them, they've got lights fixed on them, things that you need to be there 24/7 to monitor. LED great fit for that, and it's been really useful on those properties. The next challenge for us, I guess, I think we're at a tipping point with internal office lighting. About 8 months ago, we published a standard on how we would approach in lighting projects, and it was very much a mixed mode approach. The cost of LEDs was still fairly high, and the energy savings were similar to T5 high frequency. We were sort of advocating we'll still go with T5 high frequency in open plan areas, but we would introduce LED in hard to access areas, stairways, places like that, cores which get left on longer hours, which again justified this payback period for them. But we are now at a sort of tipping point where LED is advancing so quickly that we have to keep revisiting the standards that we're doing and keep changing them. Because it's getting to a stage now where the costs are coming down as the take-up increases. The performance and the quality is increasing as well. And we're about to do a couple of floors of a major office in Reading with their lighting. I guess one of the challenges with that has been that there's not a standard like there is for the external lighting. Is not so critical really. But when you've got people working under the lights 8 hours a day, it's much more critical to that standard correct. And LED has lacked a sort of consistent standard for application, which I believe there is one due next year, and the kind of things that they're going to be covering and will be useful for people selecting them. The things such as the colour rendering, the colour quality. LEDs are cool, really. Around that sort of 4,000K on the spectrum, and we've introduced a few little pocket areas of LED internally where we see how staff are reacting to this. They are a different kind of light to what they're used to in terms of the sort of warmer fluorescence that we tend to go for. But they found the colour quality really good. Standard should to define what kind of colour rendering we should be looking for from the LED. So kind of 8+. And whether it will shift over life. So when we get the details through from a particular LED lighting product, we can be confident that figure will keep us going for the extended length of the LED light. The life expectancy, I think that needs to be established. The kind of figures that are banded about vary quite widely. So it will be good to get a standard where each fitting we can make an intelligent choice about we can rely on the data that's being stated there, and whether the lights degrade over time and the kind of lamp failures that they're suffering from, etc. Another useful thing that we've seen is we've tended to buy the LED lights that are fitted in parallel, so one lamp fails doesn't affect the rest in the group. So lamp failures over time don't have such an impact. And looking at replaceable lamp assemblies within the lights as well internally. So if LEDs do fail, we can just replace them rather than the whole fittings. So that's a project that's coming up in a month, and I think that's the next phase for us, is really start to introduce it internally. And as I said before, I think we're at a tipping point where I think within the next 12 months things might really change for LEDs in terms much more induction into the internal environment, and I guess challenges for us as well as we start to introduce that. Okay, that's for me done, Lucinda. What I would just say is that if anyone wants to contact me through Lucinda, I'm quite happy to share some of the case studies that we've done, some issues we may have had. Quite happy to share that through Lucinda if anyone's got any feedback after that air today.
Great. Okay, so we're going to move on to the question and answer session now. As I mentioned before, you should be able to see a Q&A box in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. So use that to just send over your questions, and I will ask those over the next few minutes. So we've had a few questions come in already. The first of which is from Riz, who says, how do you go about targeting the buildings with the biggest wins? What data do you use to make these decisions? Do you look at how the building is currently used and occupied against the lighting system currently in place?
Yeah, we've targeted the biggest buildings against. What we've done is we've conducted energy surveys at some of our top consuming sites. These are self-conducted by our FM teams that we've developed a sort of high-level database where they can select things. So we know exactly what kind of external lighting we've got, and we know exactly how it is currently controlled. And this is where we've been able to focus in on really high-consuming sites with 3 kilowatt hours of lighting, trickling away throughout the night from dusk till dawn, 365 days a year. And it's easy then to work out that kind of existing load and that existing consumption that you're using, and how, by inputting LED, how that will have an impact on that. And you can, another side of it, with the maintenance side of it, all kinds of repairs, there's lamp replacement, any kind of lamp failures or control failures. We've got access to how much we spend on that through our financial accounts. So we can build up a pretty good business case perhaps for replacing those with LED, those kind of sites. So it's all about collecting the data for your sites really, and it's challenging for us because, as I said, we've got 180. So you can imagine pulling in, our long-term goal was pulling the data for all of those 180 sites, and so we know exactly where the opportunities lie, not just in terms of external lighting, but internal lighting, heating, cooling, everything within those buildings, which is something we're sort of progressing at the moment. But hopefully that answers that question.
Great. Our next question is from Arzang, who says, does the Environment Agency have a payback threshold that must be met, or is it site-by-site value?
Yes and no, if that makes sense. The threshold that we look at for our lease buildings is that if the payback is greater than the time left on the lease, then we wouldn't invest. But for our own buildings, it would be taken on a case by case basis. Because we have a number of different funding streams available to us. We have each of the facilities managers has a budget that they're able to use for making improvements to their buildings, so people can apply to that. We also have something quite innovative in the what we call the carbon reduction fund. And what we did is, instead of offsetting our carbon emissions to go carbon neutral, we took the amount of money that it would cost us to go carbon neutral, and we invest that into ourselves. So people can apply to that each year, and the criteria for that is the cost per ton of carbon saved, and also innovation. So we're looking to trial innovative ideas and things within ourselves to see if they work or not. So that's where the funding from these sorts of things. So in one way, yes, we do have a threshold, and in another, no, we don't.
Yeah, I think what I'd just add to that is that we very much, for the buildings that I'm looking after, we follow a hierarchy that this Carbon Trust advocate, really, that we look at the kind of installed equipment within a building and how it's being controlled and operated. So the kind of quick wins in terms of, simple things like, which we have AMR on our building, so we monitor the usage we've got half-hourly data, so we can see where things are running when they shouldn't be. So the simple, low-cost, quick payback things are targeted obviously first, before we move into things such as, upgrading, new aircon, whatever it may be, or even sort of fabric upgrades. So there is a hierarchy that we employ, so we try and take the quick wins first as we do, but on some of the things where we've done those, things such as external lighting are kind of the next step, or renewables.
On to our next question, which is from Richard, who says, do you know if the new standard addresses concerns about flicker and health effects?
I think it will. I must admit I haven't got sight of it. I've got sight of a document that outlines what it will be looking at. I'm not aware of LEDs having a problem with flicker, only in terms of quality. I have heard them in terms of if you get a low-end product, they've been known to be very poor. But the ones we put internally as well, we've trialled, as I said, a couple of small sections on certain offices, certain floors. We've tended to go for a higher-end product, and we haven't suffered problems with flicker. So I would, and that would all be covered in the standard. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't.
And our next question is from Robin, who says, it's encouraging to hear that the Environment Agency are using lighting designers. Speakers, please comment on the Carbon Trust approach through energy efficiency loans. It appears to recommend putting the installer at the centre of the project. In fact, the installer could be in-house or a local electrician with little specialist knowledge of LEDs. Hit the lighting supplier and lighting designer who need to be at the centre of the agreement.
Yeah, I guess with us we're quite fortunate that internally we've got a mechanical engineering department, national department, that are populated with building services engineers, and we tend to use them as well into the design process. It's a difficult one because we've worked with some really good designers, and then we've worked with, as I said before, designers that are linked to a lighting company. And we've had problems with over-specification. I think, as I said before, we're quite fortunate because we've got almost like an intelligent client within where we can look at the designs that are being proposed, and we can work together with the designer to come up with something that's mutually acceptable for both of us, I think. I don't think there's a clear answer for that. I think it's a creative approach, really. I think you need to have some understanding of what the design would hold, I think. And as I said before, we've had some bad ones through from some very credible designers. So it's for us, I guess, a cynical approach that we take, that you demonstrate to us that it's complying with the relevant standards, but we have some input into that process as well, I think.
Great. Fran is interested to know which LED manufacturer you used. Is that something you're able to share with us?
Probably not, but I'm an
No worries.
Well, I think, in terms of LED, it's. I think most people would know that one of the market leaders and all of the market leaders, and you don't go wrong with selecting, because LED has become, the next big thing. Yes, there are a proliferation of companies that have appeared out of the woodwork, and we've been bitten on this. We did a small trial of retrofitting LED tubes into existing fittings. So you remove the control gear, and you put the tube in, and I've been bitten with poor quality tubes that sag, 5-foot tubes that sag in the middle, that flicker as one of the options on there. So it can be a learning process, and we always do a very small trial first, a very small area. We don't jump in the deep end until we've tried them. But one through that, we've tended to favour the established, long existing companies that plough a lot into their research and development, and we can be fairly sure with the product that we're getting, and taking up references as well. So if you've got a product that looks great and it lasts forever and it's chucking out loads of light, ask for a few references on where it's been used, and so you can follow it up with where it's been installed before, and just check that it does what it says. I think it's just trying to be careful as you would with anything that you purchase, really.
Sure. Next question is, does the Environment Agency specify products with the international standards for reliability and quality, such as L70, LM79, LM80, and CE?
Yeah, our sort of quality standards. The CE one is the one we usually specify, to be honest. But yeah, we put the quality standards where we can.
Okay, and Alan is interested in knowing where he can purchase LED floodlights. He says he's seen some fitted recently in Sheffield Council, but his current electrical supplier can't match the quality of light being emitted. So he'd like to know where the best place is to buy LED lighting from.
I mean, if he emails me, I can email him the details of what we've used, and where several options, obviously. But I can email him the suppliers and the types of fitting that we've used, if that's okay.
Right, we can arrange that after the session.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next question, which is from Richard, who says, what about internal areas? What did you do there?
Yeah, I think this is a very new area for us. As I say, we've trialled a couple of pockets internally. We've tried retrofit approach, and I must admit we weren't hammered with that, because it wasn't just a case of replacing the tubes. There was a lot of work to strip out the control gear and sort of retrofit, and also the optics. The optics were designed. The diffusers were designed for the fluorescent light that was in there and the kind of light that gives out, which LED was different. So there was a bit of sort of compatibility issue with retrofitting. So and they were taking our poor electricians quite a while to do, actually, as well. So we've kind of steered away from retrofitting, rightly or wrongly, and gone for total light replacements. They've worked really well, and as I say, we've got a project coming up doing a couple of complete floors with LEDs, and the lighting, costs have come down, the quality's gone up, the performance has gone up, and with the controls that we're putting in as well, I think it'll be a really sort of a good trial for us, and as I said, I think it will shape the way that we develop the standard going forward for internal. It's just that we've got to be, a little bit more wary internal. People are very sensitive to lights, but in terms of the old style fluorescent buildings, that we've still got a lot of buildings with old style switch arc fluorescents, which sort of low flicker, and over the years, and they flicker on failure, and if we can replace those now with LEDs after this trial, I think will become the way that we do things internally. Already sort of knocked out things such as the halogen down lights for sort of set lighting really, or lighting in reception areas and things like that. So that our standards sort of banned halogen use within buildings as well. So I think in terms of internal, interesting to see what is contained in the proposed standard, which I think is coming out September of next year, I believe. Because that will really help us and help everywhere in terms of selecting the kind of products that you want and having some kind of faith in what's being stated on those products as well.
Okay, and we've got a final question here, which is from Miles Lang again, and he says, regarding submetering to check consumption and commissioning, have you looked at wirelessly controlled LED fixtures that monitor their consumption and allow for continuous commissioning?
No, is the short answer to that. It sounds interesting though. I haven't heard of that. That would be useful if he could feed back to me. That would be quite good. No, we really just look at trying to almost the trial that we were doing, trying to capture the before and after in a kind of scientific way, really. As with anything you want to do energy reduction wise, we're always keen to get real hard facts rather than estimate. So within our specification, we wanted them to submeter, even if it was just portable clip-on submeters, which lower costs, but we get the same kind of data through. So that was the theory beyond it. But I'd be interested to know about that product as well.
Okay, well I think that brings us to the end of the session. I'd like to thank you all for participating in today's webinar and for all your questions and comments. A special thanks to Alan and Tom for their great presentations. I'm posting the recording of this webinar in the next few hours on the Energy and Carbon Management Working Group on 2 Degrees, and I'll email that link out to you by the end of the day. Thanks again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, bye.